Hey everyone, welcome to the Hey Hannah podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Maya Fields, but to my friends and those who know me well, I'm just Maya. I'm a higher education administrator, a mother, and a wife of 14 amazing years. But above all, I'm a Christ follower. This podcast is a special platform created to honor the memory of my beloved daughter, Hannah. It's here that I have the chance to have the conversations that I never got to have with her, to share the wisdom and love I wish I could have passed on. It's a reminder to cherish the precious moments we're given and a testament to the power of healing, hope, and personal growth. If you're someone who's seeking personal growth, inspiration, and practical advice to build a solid foundation for a successful and fulfilling life, this is a place for you. Join me as we honor Hannah's memory together. Laugh, cry, and learn. Get ready for a podcast that is so much more than you could ever imagine. The Hey Hannah podcast, healing hearts, one conversation at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hey Hannah podcast. I appreciate you all so much for continuing to tune in and support the show. Absolutely appreciate it. Today we have a special guest with us today. We have Melissa Winger. She is on a mission to transform healthcare by putting patients first. And she's a passionate advocate with nearly 30 years of experience navigating the medical system. She understands firsthand the challenges that families face. And at just 18, she became a mother to a son with severe disabilities. She was thrust into a system that too often fails its most vulnerable patients. So we are glad to have her here today just to share her experience and share just some tips and tricks that she's picked up for navigating such a difficult space. You know, in her book, Who Cares? The Real Patient Experience, she exposes the harsh realities of healthcare and the urgent need for reform. So today, as a certified healthcare quality and patient experience professional, she blends personal experience with expertise to push for change. So we are absolutely thankful that she's taking the time today to share that expertise with us. And I just pray going in that this episode is a blessing to all who hears and that we're able to learn so much from her and her experience. So first of all, Melissa, thank you so much for being here and for your willingness to share what you've learned based on just your personal experiences. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Absolutely. So we ran down a lot already in your bio, but can you just give us a little bit of backstory, just like with your personal experience and just how you decided to pivot from what was going on in your life to kind of step outside and say like, okay, this is what happened with me, but I want to use this to help other people. Can you just kind of catch us up to speed with that process a little bit?
Yeah, so my son is now 29 years old. So 29 years ago, at the age of 18, I had my son, and I had him, and there was no concerns at his birth. I had
Yeah.
concerns, but they did not. So I actually took him home as a typical baby. He had feeding issues, so I had to learn how to feed him in a special way. But I brought him home, and I had a lot of concerns. He had never woken up. He had never cried. He was very weak. And I kept bringing him to emergency rooms and stuff and was not given the attention that he needed. And I want to say it was because now that I look back, the stereotypes of being a young mom, an adolescent mom, teen mom, whatever you call it. So it took 4 months to get a proper exam for him. And he was very sick at the time. And he had lost a bunch of weight. He was only born 5 pounds, 15 ounces, but he was already down at 4 months old to barely 6 pounds. And finally, one doctor heard a heart murmur. And so we got a cardiologist involved, and then we started seeing other types of things that were wrong. But it took 4 months. How we survived those 4 months with me after being diagnosed with a very rare chromosome disorder. So there isn't a name for it either. He's just missing half of his fourth chromosome. And so he had a problem with every single organ system. Now, every organ system was affected in some way. And so to survive those 4 months without medical treatment for any of his disorders was pretty shocking to me. So, yeah, so he ended up with multiple organ system issues
Mhm.
and he has severe developmental disabilities. And so that's how we started our journey with survival mode for a good 10, 15 years.
Oh my goodness. So when you say, not to interrupt you, but I'm just curious, you said at birth there were no concerns. Like, did they not see anything or, oh, wow.
No, I had a lot of issues. Like he had a cleft palate,
Oh,
but it wasn't the lip. So it wasn't obvious. It
yeah.
was, he was missing everything behind the gum line,
Uh-huh.
but that was it. And I still don't know the reasoning at the time. They just gave him over to me and I was concerned. Like he can't wake up. He doesn't cry. And
Yeah.
they said, oh, he'll figure it out. He's just acting premature, even though he wasn't premature. Yeah.
Goodness. So you go through this experience, and then obviously, I'm sure you get to a point, as you mentioned, of like, no one else should have to go through something like this. So, how did you, because I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of emotions there on your own, how did you pivot outside of yourself to say, hey, I'm going to take my experience and make sure that it's helping someone else? What was that thought process like?
I was a little naive in the first few years, thinking, first of all, that things were happening to my son, like maybe it was patient safety issues, medical errors, wrong prescriptions, things like that.
My
And I
goodness.
thought, okay, this is just, we have horrible luck. This is bad luck.
Yeah.
Not even looking into the larger system. I just kind of kept focusing on just him and I. And then throughout the course of the years, and things were continuing to be very confusing working with the medical system,
Yeah.
but also the medical system was not, we were in advocacy mode 24/7. Everything
Mhm.
he needed, I had to fight for. And as somebody who is non confrontational at all parts of life, this was extreme for me. But it was everything. And if some of your viewers have children that have special needs, it's you're having to argue with the school. You're having to argue with it. It's just
Yeah.
this constant trouble. And I just over time started looking for a book. Actually, I wanted
Yeah.
to know that I wasn't the only one dealing with all of this. That it was happening to other people too. And I literally could not find that book. I could find books that were written by doctors and economists, but I wanted that raw patient
Yeah.
at the bedside 24/7 for weeks on end experience. I couldn't find that. And so I I had to write the book, basically. Like, well,
So it's
I guess
up
I
to
got to
you.
write it.
Up to you to do.
Yeah.
Isn't it something so unique about how just seeing the fact that someone else has done it kind of gives you that hope to like, I can do it or I can make it and I can overcome too. I just find that I don't know. I just feel like that's such a unique concept, just how like we're all connected and we need each other. And I remember after Hannah, that was one of the things I was looking for. Like, show me someone who is living after the fact. Like, are they laughing? Are they going, do they have
Yeah.
friends? Like, is it possible to have a normal life again? And that's part of the reason, like, I continue to do the podcast. Is like, even though, we're not talking about grief and loss all the time. It's like, I know just the women that I've connected with, it's like just having someone out there to know, like, oh, they lived through this too.
Mhm.
It gives someone else the hope. Like, just being, living in your normal life, give someone else the hope that they can kind of make it to the other side too. I'm just so fascinated by that for
And you
sure.
just don't want to, you don't want to feel alone. You just, there's somebody else out there. And I started then turning everything out, the frustrations I was having, whether it was home care or medications. And I just started asking myself questions like, why is it like this? Like, and I would dive into research, and believe me, my research went to some deep, dark place that I didn't even believe. Like, I was like, this is
Yeah.
shocking how. And then I started asking myself, why are we okay with it? Why are we okay with my son had some pretty horrible medical errors, and and especially in my book, I just want to call this out. I don't call out any provider or hospital because that doesn't matter. It happens everywhere. But I wanted to figure out, why are we okay with things happening to our kids, our loved ones, or ourselves in the medical system? Like, there's no, like, what can you do? You can sue somebody, but I'm like, well, yeah, but I got surgery scheduled in 2 weeks. That's probably not going to look good. And then what does that accomplish? Like, doesn't,
Yeah.
so I was like, I needed to make sure this doesn't happen again to anyone else. And what am I going to do? Am I going to sit back and just complain, or am I going to step up and say, hey, this is what happened. What can I do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
I want to work with you.
Yeah. I think it's something to be said too, though, Melissa. You spoke about in your part, like the 4 months, how many times you had to go back again and back again and back again. And I think sometimes that could be a bit intimidating, especially when you're going against larger systems. Like, okay, I'm having to come and tell medical professional again, like, I feel like you're wrong. So you feel like, in a sense, okay, well, am I the one to
Mhm.
be questioning, and then you're having to come back, well, maybe they're right. Maybe it is me. And I think sometimes people just kind of get worn down to like, well, maybe I am wrong and just kind
Mhm.
of go with it. What do you credit like your ability to just keep going back? Was it like a gut feeling or
No, I actually think I went a little crazy at times because what was happening to my baby is every time I would go to try to feed him, within about 5 or 10 seconds, he would turn blue. And I would have to flip him over, pull his tongue forward. This happened all the time.
oh
And
my goodness.
And I broke every driving safety, child safety thing. I had him in my car going to the emergency room. And this was an older car with those big, long bench seats. And I had him right next to me in the car seat. And I held the tip of his tongue forward while we drove, just so he wouldn't turn blue. And I would go into the ER and I'm like, sew his tongue down. And they're like, whoa, man, whoa, man. The actual turning point that happened was, a doctor said, well, you're young, and maybe you don't have the right type of parenting skills. So he set me up with a teen mom mentor that was in our
Yeah.
county. She came to my house. This woman was just, it was a godsend. This woman came to my house and I'm like, well, here's my baby. And she's like, you look really sick. And I'm like, I know. And I gave her the story and she goes, pack him up. We're going to the ER. And she fought for us. And she's like, how dare you not listen to her? And they were almost like, whatever you need, lady, just settle down. And that's when he got his first thorough exam, and they heard his heart condition. And they also diagnosed him. All of his intestines were malrotated, so he had emergency surgery later that day, actually. So she was a godsend.
Sounds like it. It
Yes.
definitely sounds like it. So you are going through your experience. You decide like, okay, the book, it's what's needed. Tell us a little bit more about like the meat and potatoes of the book. If we dive into it, are we peppering in your story with like, how do you navigate this? Or give me a little bit of a sneak peek playbook, so to speak, of what we would be diving into with the book.
Yeah, so I organized it into healthcare systems that I
Yeah.
thought were a problem, and why they're a problem. Each chapter, so let's say I have a chapter on emergency medicine, and you might think, okay, what's wrong with emergency medicine? It sounds like you might not be interested, but I put the first half of the chapter on stories that have happened to my son, and experiences with the emergency medical system. And some had me questioning a lot about pediatric emergency care, because I did not realize that most EMS paramedics, they don't require a lot of training for pediatrics. And the ambulance itself doesn't even have pediatric equipment, things like this. And so I would then tell my son's stories in this chapter, but then the second half is more about why it's like this, like the history of EMS. Interesting fact is, like, the first ambulances were also hearses, which is a little conflict of interest, I think, that you have an ambulance that's also a hearse. Because a hearse, right? It's like, that was the only thing that could fit a person laying flat, so that's why they used them. but I talk about a little bit of history and then sort of the policies around EMS and the changes that I think need to happen. And so I go through each chapter like that, and I talk all the way through prenatal care with my son, and then all the way through long-term care because he is in a group home now. So I literally cover the entire health system with home care, with medications, with you name it. I think we got it covered.
It sounds like definitely a helpful tool for anyone to just kind of pick up some tips on what may help them navigate their situation. I would say I'm curious, based on your experience, you're dealing with a big healthcare system, a lot of medical jargon, a lot of terms that you're hearing. If someone's in, like, this is their experience, this is their life right now, what first steps would you give them to start advocating for themselves? Like, what does that look
So I think it depends on the situation. So if you are in a one-time illness situation, I think that looks different than if you're in a long-term situation. But the advice that I would give is documentation. You always think you're going to remember. You always think, okay, I go to this doctor's appointment, whatever they tell me, I'll remember that. Truthfully, no, no, we think we're going to remember a lot more than we can, right?
I do that?
So it's that documentation, or if you get like bad news, horrible news, your brain is likely just to shut off at that moment and you don't remember anything that was said after. And one big critique, and I think it follows through all of healthcare, is everybody often says, well, call us if you have any questions. Call us, let us know. You leave the emergency room. Why don't you go ahead and come back if you have any other issues? In reality, you can't call anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
You can. It's just going to take a while. It's going to take a while. So just document everything. Bring a friend with you. Bring a relative, a neighbor, anyone to kind of be that second voice and write questions down. Always write questions down.
That's definitely some great tips because I can think of, especially having a friend, and like if you hear some of the worst news or it's just a lot coming at you, you can completely shut down. But having someone else there to kind of pick that information up could be very helpful for sure. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Definitely some great advice. I'm thinking, well, a couple things I want to ask you. So the first thing I'll say is it sounds like obviously you are juggling a lot of balls through this process, kind of like, keeping all the things spinning. You're taking
Yeah.
care of yourself. You are continuing to advocate for your child. You're still taking care of your child. How did you keep Melissa together without falling apart during this time? And how did you do that without feeling guilty about kind of focusing some time on yourself? Because that can be hard.
Yes, I want to say that this is a entirely different type of parenting than anyone in my family or friends that have typical children. It's not the same. And so when people say you need to take a break, that means something different to somebody who's a full-time caregiver. Because there's an instinct of if I'm not here to take care of them, then they may not survive. Something horrible is going to happen. So you feel very selfish, which I think in general, a lot of parents do right? When you like, I'm going to take a vacation, or I'm going to do something, you still like, but it is so important to any kind of respite you can get to get your mind wrapped around the situation
Yeah.
because you're living in crisis mode when you have a child or a loved one that's sick and relies on you for literally their survival. And I had to learn that the hard way. I got a heart condition from stress, a bad arrhythmia at the age of 20. And yeah, and we couldn't find any physical reason for it. So they said I was a stress induced arrhythmia. And I ended up being pacemaker dependent. But what I realized is my body was taking on the stress before my mind even realized
Yeah.
what was going on. So that was a wake up call for me to be like, I literally might not be here to take care of my son.
So you have to
So
take
that
care of
you have to.
yourself.
And that
Right.
was also the stress of putting him in a group home too, was there's a lot of people out there that critique negatively if you put your loved one in a nursing home or something like that, or a group home, and it makes you feel horrible. But there was a point where I said, well, if something were to happen to me, at least my son now is established somewhere, and he would transition into a group home. And he actually really likes it there. And he's only a mile away, so I could hop over anytime, and I do. But he's doing very well. But there was a guilt for
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure. Well, thank you for explaining that because that gives some perspective. And I never thought about from the viewpoint of a caregiver even feeling that much more selfish because it is not just like, oh, my child's going to miss me. You're having to deal with so many other heavy emotions as well. When you were dealing with like hearing about the complex medical issues and just ongoing cycles of medical treatment and care, I'm sure you were also, to some extent, kind of thinking about the loss of certain expectations or maybe milestones that some new parents or people who are parents to be just kind of take for granted. Like, oh, I'm going to, see the first step or first word or whatever it is. How did you process that grief of kind of like things not being exactly as you thought they might be?
I had, and now I'm grateful for it, but my sister, she was 19 and had a baby at the same time. Our babies are a week apart.
Oh,
Yes. And so I had say is that constant comparison from
yeah.
almost day one. And for years, and I felt terrible because I love my niece to death and we're super close now. But there was a few years where I couldn't like be around them almost.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, because it was like, this is your niece and you should be happy for other people. But there was that grief that I had to face of, this isn't what maybe I expected, but this is who we are now. And a big realization that happened, and it didn't happen until, I don't know, my son 15, 16, was that I realized, for all the things, he has a lot of terminal conditions. So he's in liver failure currently, he has brain aneurysm. I had to realize that he has survived all of this, and not only survived, he is probably the happiest person ever. Just wears a costume every day. He laughs and he sings and he is happy. He has a great quality of life. But I had to look at that and go, okay, so maybe he was given to me for a reason. And maybe our purpose is to not just go by day to day in survival mode. And maybe our purpose is to show the world that this is what's happening, and change things for the next person coming behind us, and just to make things better. And maybe that was our purpose. And so that really was eye opening to me, and really started becoming an even stronger advocate at that time.
What would you say to someone who's really just still kind of dealing with the disappointment or the sadness? Was it like therapy that you feel like helped you, or certain things that you can recommend to someone who's in that space and they're trying to cross the bridge to kind of moving forward in life?
I could go back in time, I would have enjoyed my son more. I wouldn't have focused 100% on all of his medical issues. I didn't take a lot of pictures of him because I didn't want pictures of tubes and wires and all that. I didn't want pictures like that. And if I could just go back in time and be like, that's him, that's who he is, and take pictures, enjoy your child, do kid things, do fun things, go to parks. I never took him anywhere because something might happen, or judgment on others.
Yeah.
That he has a feeding tube and is he going to get stared at? I wish I could just go back and say, who cares? Just enjoy him,
Yeah.
because I
Enjoy the
didn't for
now.
so long. Maybe they're
Enjoy the
different,
now.
maybe, but they are kids and they are fun and they have a purpose. And no matter what is going on, just stop and enjoy them.
Yeah. I love that. That's excellent. Excellent advice. So you wrote the book. How are you still advocating today outside of the book in the medical community? Are you doing
Mhm.
speaking engagements? What is your involvement like today? What does that look like?
Yeah, I do a lot of advocacy work, and I have since I was 19. I joined my first advocacy board at 19. And so I work a lot with the EMS, the emergency medical services in my state and nationally, and that's for pediatrics. So I work with them closely on improving pediatric education in emergencies and preparing families, especially families that have children with disabilities, and how do you prepare for disasters? Because that looks different if your child is on life saving equipment at home and then there's a hurricane or a tornado. How do you prepare for that? So I do a lot of work in that space. Also, do a lot of speaking at the Academy of Pediatrics and really trying to now switch. I do a lot of vulnerable adult neglect and abuse issues now because that's the world we're in now.
Yeah.
It has been very sad. And I do talk about this in the book, and I talk about what happened to people in long term care during COVID as well, because we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about people that are in those situations and what care is like. But I do want to point out, though, like in my book, and I might have a lot of negative stuff to say about the healthcare system, but I'm really on the side of the providers because the providers have the same frustrations as the patients do. They're tired of working with getting prior authorizations or limited time with their patients. They also have issues, or nurses that
Yeah.
have to have 20 patients on their floor in an inpatient unit. So it's like we're all on the same side.
Yeah. That's a good perspective to have, and
Yeah.
that's true, and I think we have to be reminded of that sometimes, like, they're
Yes.
dealing with frustrations on their end too. It's
Mhm.
not like they're intentionally saying, "I just wanna give you a hard time."
No, no. And then you worry about the burnout level of the caregivers. Like, what does that look like in 5 or 10 years? Is anyone going into the medical field or the nursing field?
Man. Well,
See, I
I
just
am
gave you a
just
whole list of things to worry about.
I know, right? All the other things to add.
You'll be fine.
But I really admire how you took your situation and stepped outside of yourself and decided to devote your additional time and energy, which I don't know how you even found additional time and energy to helping other people. I really admire that. I think that is such a wonderful quality, and it takes a lot of strength and resilience to be able to do that. So just thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do. That is amazing. We end every episode of our show with the same question. So I do definitely want to get to ask you, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received, or what is a piece of advice that you would give to someone that you deeply care about?
Yeah. So I went and saw a spiritual healer, and I don't even know what that means. But I had a 10-minute conversation with this person that turned my life around for the better. She told me my son was about 20 at the time. I was feeling guilty about putting him in a group home. And she just stopped. She said, "Stop it right there." She goes, "Your son has his own life purpose. He has to go out and he has to influence others and he has to have an impact on others. He can't do that if he's attached to you 24/7. Like I had to respect that my son, which most people don't, they just think, of course, my child has their life of their own. But in this situation, no, that wasn't obvious to me.
Yeah,
And so it just lifted up, like, he does have his own life purpose that has nothing to do with me. And it's that one, two or three sentences just changed my outlook on everything.
I love that. Well, you gotta love perspective when
Right?
someone comes and
I know.
shares that different
Yeah.
perspective with you for sure. It can
Mhm.
definitely shift things.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, if people want to keep up with you and follow all the wonderful things that you are doing, how can they find you? Are you on social media,
Mhm.
Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So on my website, www.whocaresbooks, books with an S, whocaresbooks.com, and that'll have links to my book. It also has like tip sheets for engaging with your providers and empowering you as a patient. All my social media links, it's all out there.
is amazing. And as always, I will link Melissa's website in the notes. So you'll be able to find that in case you don't have a pen. You can just click down in the notes and you'll be able to connect with her and find all of her wonderful resources. Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Absolutely appreciate it. And you have shared so much helpful information. I feel like we jam packed a lot into 30 minutes, but that's how it
We did.
always is. But
We did.
I do appreciate you taking the time to join us. It has been an absolute joy talking with you. Hannah's Hive, I hope that you picked up on some wonderful tips and maybe you'll think of somebody in your life who can definitely benefit from hearing our conversation today. Make sure that you share this episode with them. Don't keep it all to yourself. Make sure you share it so it can be a blessing to other people. As I said before, and I'll say it again, I always appreciate you taking the time to listen in on the show. You can be doing a million other things, but you decide to continue to tune in and be in community here with us. So I appreciate it as always. And until next time, everybody, take care.
And that's it. I'm out of here.
So much for joining us on this episode of the Hey Hannah podcast. We hope that you found inspiration, insight, and encouragement in our conversation today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay connected with us, be sure to like, subscribe, and review the Hey Hannah podcast. Your feedback helps us reach more people and spread our message of love and wisdom. You can also follow us on social media at Hey Hannah Podcast. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to stay updated on all the latest episodes, behind-the-scenes exclusives, and engaging content. And for those of you who prefer the visual experience, catch the video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Just search Hey Hannah Podcast and hit that subscribe button to never miss an episode. For even more Hey Hannah goodness, visit our website at www.heyhannahpodcast.com. There you'll find updates, bonus content, and join a community that embraces you with open arms. Your continued support truly means the world to us. Together, let's spread love, share wisdom, and honor every precious moment. Because here at Hey Hannah, we believe that life is meant to be lived well. Remember, a new episode of the Hey Hannah podcast is released every Wednesday, so mark your calendars and be sure to tune in. Thank you again for being a part of Hannah's Hive. Until next time, take care.
Entertainment.